George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
Boy, when we run into a housing shortage, people will go out to just try to buy anything if they can get some housing. Well, sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't, especially if the property itself may be tough to get financed on. That's what we're going to discuss in thecreditjungle.com today. This is George Anderson, and normally we don't see too much of this, but with the housing shortage, we're seeing properties that would typically not get financed or be difficult to finance. Sellers are saying, hey, let's see if I can sell this now. So we're going to just cover briefly here just some of the different categories, broader categories of homes, condos, farms, whatever you want to call it, that are going to run into some challenges. It doesn't mean that they can't be financed, but I'm going to explain just a little bit whether or not there may be a workaround, and sometimes there's just not. So the first one we want to talk about here is what is called a non-warrantable condo. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and even FHA and VA all have condominium standards that they expect that the project must meet. And I'm going to put a link to a couple of different condo questionnaires so that if somebody's very, very curious on what are some of those things on there. But there are a lot of things that basically can knock out a project for making it eligible. One of the most common ones that we see, especially in Utah, especially by the ski areas, the resort areas, is that the vast majority of the units, you might have a 100-unit condominium project, and there's only half a dozen people that are year-round residents. The rest of them, they're vacation homes, they're investment properties, they Airbnb them out, whatever have you. And while you can get financing on those, the terms of that loan, they're not going to be the same as a conventional loan. So what we're going to do here is the answer of this warrantable or non-warrantable condos. Okay, if it doesn't meet the guidelines that Fannie and Freddie have for that one, this one is a definite, that's a maybe. So sometimes they can get financed, sometimes they can't, but you're looking at like a portfolio loan, and then there's some what they call non-QM loans that would look at and entertain some of these non-warrantable condo projects, and it's typically going to be with a larger down payment, normally a minimum of 20%, sometimes 30%, and then also the interest rate is not going to be as good. But if it's a good investment, if you know that it would cash flow, then these are still options you can look at. The other thing that we run into is units. As soon as you have 5 units in a property, okay, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA for that matter, they will lend up to 4 units onto a fourplex, and that is a legal 4 units on one tax ID number on one parcel. As soon as you hit that 5th unit and go over that, you can get financing on it, but again, it's not going to be Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. You're going to be doing a commercial loan. So I'm just putting C for commercial on there. And another category that pops up, not too often, but when they came out with some of these standards 20 years ago, or it was quite a bit ago, there were still a lot of these homes around. These are manufactured homes. Sometimes they call them preemies, drag and drops. I've heard a few different, slang regarding these types of homes. They're normally pretty good construction, but they're not always sitting on a permanent foundation. They've got jack stands with a slab of concrete underneath them. And if they were built prior to 1976, they're not going to be eligible for conventional financing. And there's other reasons too that can knock them out. In other words, if it was on one site and then it got picked up and then moved to a different location, that will knock it out for eligibility also. But prior to 1976, your manufactured homes, now these are ones that are not in a trailer park. Okay, the ones in a trailer park, that's not even a real estate loan. So that's not even eligible for that. Now there are lenders that do those loans, again with less favorable terms. But if you're in a trailer park and you're paying pad rent, by definition, you do not own the land. Okay, so you don't have the real estate title to the property, but you actually have like a Department of Motor Vehicles title to the property because it's got axles and wheels and the whole bit. Now these do when they come in, but they're taken off, they're put onto a permanent foundation, they're attached according to HUD guidelines, and then there'll be like a little HUD tag is what they call it, and it basically looks like a dog tag, an old military dog tag on it, and it's pop riveted on a couple of sides on each one of the units if they come in there. And so if you have the HUD tags, if they're on the property, then you know you're okay. If you don't know what the year is, if it's fishy around that, look for the HUD tags and that'll give you the answer to that one. So this one, we're going to basically put a no on that one. You're not going to get that one done. The next category here, this is larger pieces of land. Now this again, this becomes a very subjective thing. There used to be a 10-acre limit on it, and Fannie and Freddie have kind of loosened up a little bit on it, but if, let's just say you've got a 40-acre parcel, let's say you're somewhere out in the Midwest and there's a farmhouse sitting out there that's like dilapidated, but it's livable, and it's sitting on 40 acres, and the land is worth $1 million, but the house is probably worth 100. Okay, you have what's considered an excess land to value ratio there, and that can be a potential problem. Now the way you would fix it is that you would just take out an acre for the house and make it 2 parcels. You can get the financing on the house, but now you're doing a separate loan to buy the remaining 39 acres. So you technically could, if there's not a land to value problem with it, like if somebody's got a mansion or something like that, again, it's different type of financing, but it's possible to be able to get some financing, maybe Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac on this, but again, this land to value ratio, there's a subjective number that's called like 30% land to value ratio, but again, the appraiser is the one that's going to go out there and they've got their work cut out on this. By the way, appraisers really don't get excited about doing any of these types of properties. So on this one here, it's not necessarily a dead deal on arrival, but it's going to be a maybe. And then the last category here, these are just some, and some of these homes are beautiful, they're livable. I've got a neighbor of mine that has a home that is just this huge silo. I mean, it's literally, I don't know what the circumference of it is. I mean, the diameter is probably 40, 50 feet. Very spacious, very beautiful. But is there another one even somewhere else in the state of Utah? I'm not sure. Because part of being able to determine a value of a property is to determine, are there comparable sales? Well, what are you comparing a geodesic dome house to, or what are you comparing an earthen, subterranean home to? Log homes sometimes will come into this category. Now, the exception is there's some areas in the state of Utah, and then also Wyoming, Idaho, just some of the western states where it's very prominent to find log homes. So if you can find comparable sales to support the value, log home is probably the easiest one out of this category. But if you're the odd man out, if you're in a subdivision and everybody's got, brick, stucco, stone, and you are the one log home in a subdivision and you've got to go more than 10 miles to find the next log home, you could be getting tough financing on that one. So I'm going to put on here we'll put an M for log home, but for the rest of these, you're probably looking at a big no. So just something to keep in mind if you're out looking at properties and something that sellers who know that their homes are tough to finance, they're willing to throw them on the market right now because they figure, hey, there's so much demand out there, what the heck, let's just see if we can get the home sold, especially if they're thinking about trading down or doing something. So just a couple of things to keep in mind here, and I probably even forgot one or two. But these are the ones that came to mind here immediately, so hopefully this is helpful. And a lot of this, you just really need to talk with a good lender, and the lender sometimes will even have to do this in consultation with an appraiser. And between the two of them, we can get the answers to some of these maybe questions on here. But it's fine, it's really good to find out the no's before you have a non-refundable earnest money that you might forfeit if you just pull out of the offer for arbitrary reasons, because the contracts right now that we're seeing, you're having to put a certain amount of money that's non-refundable upon the seller's acceptance. So don't risk your money on a questionable property without talking to a competent lender first. So hopefully that's helpful for you. This is George Anderson. Thanks for coming into thecreditjungle.com today. Remember, you can push button, and the subscribe thing's actually on YouTube. So if you're watching it on Facebook, you're not going to see that. But the channel is there. It's still thecreditjungle.com. And I would be happy to answer any of your questions. And you have a wonderful day.